Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it, because it felt a lot like that. I'd never been in trouble before that I could remember, and now all of a sudden I'm in trouble. And it was a tears, yelling, you're bad kind of thing. And that was a new world for me. Looking back on it, I wish I could have been thought, I wonder if this is how Kevin Callahan feels all the time. That he's disappointed people, that he's let people down, that everybody's angry with him all the time. But I did not do that. Instead, I said,
when life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain. To find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of More Than One Way Podcast. I'm Whitney Ross, and with me, as always, is Thom Rasnick.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Thom. Hello, everyone. Today, we have a story for you that we're going to start with.
So the story is from my childhood. I grew up in this town, Jupiter, Florida. You ever heard of Jupiter, Florida?
I have. I've never been there, but I've heard of it.
It's a lovely town. I mean, it's just, and when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, it was really an ideal place. It just, especially when I was in elementary school, it was just this beautiful town. And everybody cut their yard the same way. And everybody painted their house, and it was pretty. And everybody took baths or showers. And there was Little League and, all the things that make for just a beautiful little town. Mm-hmm. And everybody just seemed to be always kind of doing the same thing, at least the people I was around, and it was just great. And the people were fantastic. An ideal little American town, except for one family. And their names are the Callahans. The Callahans didn't do anything that anybody else did. They didn't have yard. They didn't even have a yard. Their front yard seemed to just be kind of like dirt. Mm-hmm. And there was all kind of junk in their front yard. And I think that's the way that they made their money. I guess that's the way they lived. And when you saw them out anywhere, they weren't clean. Mm-hmm. And everybody just said, stay away from the Callahans. Don't go near them. They're really bad people. So in this ideal town, here's this one family that just didn't quite measure up. Mm-hmm. And as I look back on it, I think there were stories that people told on them. And one story, everybody thought this was so funny, but as I look back on it now, it just feels kind of sad to me. And they say things like, well, the mother and the father of the Callahans only have one pair of dentures, and they share them.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's, it's like, what kind of people are these, right?
Yeah.
They're terrible. And I thought to myself now, as a 58-year-old person looking back on my childhood, there's some reason that people, and me, including me especially, that make people like to have someone that they can feel superior to. Someone that they can say, well, at least I'm not like the Callahans. Mm. And they held all that stuff for that town, it seemed like to me, because they were everything you didn't want to be. Now, what does that make you think of when you hear that?
Oh, man.
Because this is kind of the setup to the story in a way.
Yeah. I guess it brings up immediately for me, it kind of it makes me think about my own town growing up, and think, did I have a Callahan, was there a Callahan family in my town or my neighborhood? And I think there probably was, just a group of people that stood out from kind of what the accepted other behaviors were. And because of that, they seemed scary to me as a kid, just because I didn't understand why they would want to be different, thinking that they were, choosing that and that was something for them. So I guess that's just where it kind of takes me to my own thoughts around kind of my community and growing up, and just people that may have fallen into that same sort of category that was either created by the town or by myself even.
Yeah. Well, and once again, I think if I were to guess, everybody has a Callahan in their town. Everybody on some level has some group of people or a person who they can look to and say, "Thank God I'm not that." And there's something about that, like I said, at least for me anyway, that must serve some part of us as human beings.
Yeah, do you think, is that a human thing? Just that feel?
Yeah, it's a human thing because there's so many stories about it throughout the spiritual world, throughout sacred scriptures, throughout different cultures. There's always kind of the norm and living into the norm. And then those people, those people. And something about those people, they hold something for us as humans, I think. And I'm as I continue on with the story, maybe we can flesh that out a little bit. Okay, so one of the Callahan's kids was in my grade, and the time I'm thinking of right now is 5th grade, and I've used 5th grade before because 5th grade in that ideal town was for me an ideal time. Because I was just one of those kids at that time that did everything right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did the right thing always. I obeyed my parents. I obeyed my teachers. I obeyed my coaches. I did what I was supposed to do. And I was really rewarded for it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, people loved me. Parents was like, why can't you be more like, and I was that. Why can't you be more like Thom? But they called me Tommy. Why can't you be more like Tommy? And I love that. It was great, right? So 5th grade, that's where I am. So here I am in this perfect ideal town, and I'm this perfect ideal kid. I never do anything wrong. And then there's the Callahans. And the kid that was in my class, one of their children was Kevin Callahan. And Kevin, he missed more school than he was there. But when he was there, like his family, he was always dirty, very unkept, kind of kept to himself. Like you're saying, everybody was scared of him, so we didn't really try to get to know him. And so then stories came up around him, like what he was like and what, and it was always like, did you hear what Kevin Callahan did? Right? And it was like, oh, God, can't wait to hear what Kevin Callahan did.
Yeah.
And my friend said, though I didn't need this yet at this point, but my friend said he was perfect to have as somebody if you were getting in a little bit of trouble with your family, that your mom or dad was, scolding you or doing whatever it is, you could always say, well, at least I'm not like Kevin Callahan. At least I'm not like him. Did you hear what he did?
Oh, my gosh.
And according to them, their parents were like, you're right. You're right. You're not like him. So we're going to ease off a little bit on this little bad thing that you might have done. So he became like the perfect, at least I'm not him for 5th graders.
Gotcha.
And like I said, and for some reason, my friends reveled in that, used that. And I think that somehow or another that goes with some of what we're talking about at the beginning with the whole family. That depending on who I use as my measurement, right? I can always feel just a little bit better about myself because of that person is just a little bit or a lot more, quote unquote, bad than I am, or does things that I would never do. So I can feel really, really good about.
So that comparison piece allows you to kind of.
So somehow or another, it's the comparison has something to do with why all that stuff, I think, is part of the human condition. There's something in us that wants to compare, me to you, you to me, and then based on
see where we are.
See where we fall within. It's like the other day, I was flipping through the phone and I saw the Forbes 400 richest people in America.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, we love lists.
Yes.
We love that.
From
Rankings.
one,
Yeah.
you know, and I wasn't on that list, just in case you were wondering. But yeah, but that's a big measurement, right?
Yeah. And
this is where I fall within that. And, you know, the Callahans become people who I could go, well, at least I might not be in the top 400, but I'm way above Kevin Callahan.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about comparison. And the thing is I don't think there's a spiritual tradition out there that says don't do that. Don't compare. There's
not one that
says,
doesn't say that?
Yeah, there's not one that doesn't say that. There's not one that doesn't say don't do that.
Interesting.
I mean, they all say, look at your life.
Right.
Look at who you are. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Now, I see how sometimes you could compare yourself to somebody, and that might help you to do better.
Yeah, some people are motivated by that.
And then if that's the case, then I could see how that would be helpful. But I think what they're getting at, the spiritual traditions are getting at, especially the Christianity is trying to get at, is if I compare myself, then I might find, looking at myself like I did with the Callahans, and that is, I'm superior to you. Or the other side, I'm inferior to you because of the comparison. And that does something to us.
Yeah.
That does something to the way we see ourselves, the way we see life. And in my case, as the story's getting into, it's completely dismissing those people without having any idea who or what they are.
It's really using them.
Yes.
I mean, for your own benefit, with the idea that you're taking the person out of it almost. I mean, it's more the circumstance or the whatever, or the ranking or the comparison. I mean, you're really dehumanizing them.
Total dehumanization. I think that's a great way to put it. Total dehumanization of the person. And like I said, there's something in us that wants to do that. So I'm not slamming myself or anybody else who does that. It's, as I was thinking about the story in my background, I'm more just trying to get aware of it, so that I can pay attention to when I'm doing it, because it really limits me as a person and limits life as for me when I'm comparing myself and using somebody, and then that comparing and using dehumanizes whoever I'm using. So because you can do it with like in our case, it was a whole family.
Yeah.
But sometimes people have done it, and it's a whole group of people. A whole nationality, a whole religion, and on it can go. But in the microcosm, Kevin Callahan was that guy.
Gotcha.
So in this lovely little town, except for the Callahans, we took the bus to school. And I was on a bus that went into a little town called Tequesta. And then within Tequesta, there was even a more magical place than the whole of Jupiter,
oh my goodness,
which was called the Tequesta Country Club.
It's like over a rainbow bridge.
It was.
Or
It's
something.
like a rainbow bridge, a little rainbow bridge. And the sun always smiled when you were there. And so it was the Tequesta Country Club, where we called them the gates, because there were these gates that you'd go through. And that's kind of where all the professional people live, the architects and engineers and lawyers and doctors, those kind of people. And I had a lot of friends who lived there, and they had their bus that went just to that.
Yeah.
And I never rode that bus. But what I heard from my friends was everybody on the bus sang. So they'd be coming back from going to and coming back from school.
Okay.
They would break into song. So a lot of the kids that were on that bus, apparently, and I was in chorus, they were in chorus with me, would practice the chorus songs that we had sung
on the
bus, or they would do like show tunes, like like little. I know it sounds so corny, but it was like such a magical thing when I was in 5th grade. It was like they sing, and I never got to go on that bus because it just never worked out. My friends were always like, "Oh, it's so much fun. This is the best thing in the world." It's
Yeah.
And so one Friday, I was going to spend the night with somebody who lived in the Gates, and so I thought, well, this is a great time to ride the bus because I'm going to go to his house later anyway.
You get to check it out.
Yeah. So I was going to get to check it out for myself, and so I get on the bus, and we pull out of the school, and sure enough, they break into song and they start singing songs, and everybody does it. I mean, every person on the bus, there's nobody like going, God, this is lame. Everybody got into it, and so I got into it. I was singing along, with them, and it was a great way to ride the school bus. I swear, I think the school bus driver was humming along as she drove the bus, and we got to my friend's house, and it was just such a great day. Like I said, we went over the rainbow into the Gates.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a glimmering day. It was beautiful outside. And then all of a sudden my mom comes pulling up in a car. And it was like, I forgot to tell my mom I was going to ride the bus.
Oh.
Yeah, right. And so she had that feel and that I can see now as a parent of just like pure terror mixed with relief, mixed with, I'm going to kill you, all together.
Yeah.
And so she just came up and hugged me and it's like, don't you ever do that again. And then she just starts scolding me. And this was a new thing for me. Do you remember like the first time you really got in trouble?
Oh, yeah.
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 You remember what that was like?
I do. I had two older sisters and they fought each other a lot. And I found that kind of my role as a younger brother was I could kind of set them up to like go at each other and then like duck out of the way, and typical younger brother kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when my parents found out that one time I had told them that one of them had taken the other one's brush or sweater or something, I'd set something up and thought it was funny and just kind of taken off. And my parents overheard what I was doing, and it was a whole new awakening for me.
A whole new Whitney now.
Yeah, to understand.
Yeah.
The idea of just it's not okay.
Yeah.
Not okay.
Yeah, and how did that feel to you as a kid? Can you remember any of those feelings?
Oh man, it was scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. I don't think I had seen them direct that kind of energy toward me before about something. Yeah. And just that whole feeling of I had disrupted our family in a way that, from my perspective at that point, it felt like I broke things and wasn't sure what was going to happen after that.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it, because it felt a lot like that. I've never been in trouble before that I could remember, and now all of a sudden I'm in trouble. And it was a tears, yelling, you're bad kind of thing. And that was a new world for me. And once again, looking back on it, I wish I could have then thought, I wonder if this is how Kevin Callahan feels all the time.
Yeah.
That would have been a great way to connect with him. Wow, maybe he's always feeling this.
Mm-hmm.
That he's disappointed people, that he's let people down, that everybody's angry with him all the time. But I did not do that in fifth grade. I did not do that as the perfect child. Instead, I said, well, at least I'm not Kevin Callahan, right? Did you hear what he did?
To your mom?
To my mom.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, that didn't work, I have to say. It didn't work. But it still said that he still stayed in that place.
Mm-hmm.
That place of, at least I'm not you. And somehow or another, the question just kept coming back to me over and over again. Isn't it great to have somebody to feel superior to? Isn't that a great thing?
I have my own bus story. I was a bus rider. I liked riding the bus, but I was not on the cool bus either. Our bus kind of got dubbed uncool because our bus went by this place called the Snack Shack. And there was a whole crew of kids that lived behind the Snack Shack that were kind of the Callahans, I guess, of our town. And so the bus would go by the Snack Shack first. We lived just on the other side of the hill. I mean, less than a mile from this place, but it would go by the Snack Shack, and then the Snack Shack kids would get off the bus And then once the bus went on from that point, it was a totally different bus ride.
Mm.
Everything changed, like the way people felt. Like we were all a little scared of the Snack Shack kids. And so once they got off, the whole thing changed, and it was fun, and we enjoyed it and whatever, and it just makes me think about your story with the Callahans, with the idea of the way that we classified those kids as that. And we definitely felt better, and felt like, that was the good part of the bus ride versus the bad part of the bus ride. And you would want to sit where you weren't so close to those guys and that kind of thing. And it's looking back on it now, it's sad how easy it was to do that.
Yeah, it really is. It's just amazing how easy it is to say, and this is what I'm getting from that story, we're better than you.
Yeah.
Even if that's not exactly what I'm saying consciously as a kid, that's playing itself out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
That you just don't measure up.
And it's funny because they could have had the exact same impression of us, with the idea of we can't wait to get off the bus with those kids.
That's right.
They make our ride miserable.
That's right.
It could have been the exact same. We could have been feeling the same thing about each other. Who knows?
Yes, and if I just always wonder when it comes to stories like this, if we could do that, if we could say, I wonder how they're feeling or what's going on with them, rather than, as you said before, using them as a way to try to feel better about myself or make myself feel like I'm superior.
Yeah.
That if instead of doing that, if we could say, wow, I'm a lot like you. Or maybe even, and this is where the deepest spiritual traditions go, it's not so much that I'm a lot like you, it's that I am you. Is that somehow or another you and I are the same, even though we're different. That somehow, the way that the Christian tradition will talk about it, is everything's interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So that would include like all people. You've heard that?
Mm-hmm.
So that would include all people. But that interconnection means that something of what you are, I am too. And something of what I am, you are too. And when we can see each other that way, as opposed to comparison and who's better or who's worse, somehow or another it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, it's just this huge shift. And it's a hard shift.
It is. I was going to say that it gets real messy. It's not so clear.
Yes.
I think about talking about our childhood stories. It's easier to look back on those and see kind of maybe where we had the wrong perspective, but it makes you wonder, where am I doing that now?
Yeah, where am I?
That I'll look back in 10 years from now and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was behaving in that way, or that I thought this about this person. Or
I know for me that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this story. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get into it, so that I can try to see it now, so that I can try to say to myself, wow, I'm doing it with that whole group of people.
Right.
And it wouldn't even dawn on me if we hadn't taken the time to look at this story and say, yeah, I was doing it then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it now, but I can see it. And when I can see it, then I can do something with it.
Right.
Who knows what, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for each of us, it could be a different person or a group of people who we're using at any given time.
Right.
That's the freaky thing about it.
Well, because it could be somebody close to us, or it could be someone really removed from us that we could do the same thing with.
Yeah.
You think about a whole group of people that we don't understand or relate to, that it's easy to form that distance between and kind of use ourselves or use them as a comparison.
Yeah. And the negative comparison. Not as you said before, not the comparison that kind of helps me try to succeed in life or move forward, but the kind of comparison that is found in, God, it's just great to have somebody to feel superior to, even though I might not say it that way.
Yeah.
And once again, the thing that's so difficult is anything can come in and be used as the measurement. I'm superior to you because of my car. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm superior to you because of my house. I'm superior
My
to you
job
because
or-
of my job. Yeah. And on and on and on it goes. Anything can be used.
Yeah.
And each society will kind of have their big ones. And we
Mhm.
mentioned money as one. Money is one of our big ones.
Yeah.
And so it's like, not that money's bad. It's not bad at all. It's just, am I using this as a way to measure myself against people who have less money than me or more money than me?
Or the appearance of less or more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it may not even be based actually in the amount as much as it is they appear to have more.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And perception is just a huge part of that. So yeah, that's why I wanted to get into the story. And we could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I always wonder when we talk about stories like this, and thank you for sharing yours, what other people are thinking, what stories it brings up for them, because that's the hope. That's why the spiritual traditions tell stories like this.
Mm-hmm.
They tell it so that somehow or another I can see myself in the story, and it's like, oh, I remember that. That was the Callahans.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me back into it.
Well, and it's a gift that each person can receive it differently where they are in the moment. You know, it doesn't have to have one meaning necessarily.
It doesn't have to have one meaning. And like I said, in each group or person might be different depending on who the person is. So this would be a great one if people who are listening to this even just wrote in and thought of, what does this make you think of?
Yeah, what does it bring
Who
to
does it
mind?
make you think of?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not to put myself down, not to put yourself down, but to become more aware of it.
Yeah. So I think, as we talk about this and we share this story, there's a question out there, for who was Kevin Callahan's Kevin Callahan?
Yeah.
Who was the person that he felt that way about,
Yeah, so that's a great question, because it can be used on anybody. It doesn't have to just be used on someone who lives like Kevin Callahan did.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin Callahan could look at the people who lived in the Tequesta Country Club, in the gates, and be saying the same thing, and be saying, well, those people think they're great, but really I'm better than them because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And as we can see going on in the world right now today, a lot of times people who are using their gifts, using their talents, and doing well can be targeted and torn down.
And that whole phrase of, at least I'm not like,
right.
It doesn't have to be someone in a worse situation than you.
That's right.
It could be someone in a better situation than you potentially.
It could be.
That you look for ways to kind of bring them down.
To tear down.
Yeah.
That somehow or another, that's the flip side. This is the paradox and the insidious nature of what we're talking about, is that it can just creep in like that and turn a human being into something less than a human being.
Yeah.
So somebody's doing really well and they're succeeding, and then all of a sudden, here comes the attack.
Yeah.
Well, I'm better than you because you must be cheating.
Take your pick.
Or you must be greedy.
Label anything.
Or you must, or whatever it is. And anything can be used for this. That's the scary nature of it. And, I've made reference to spiritual traditions that have used this story. Well, the one within the Christian tradition is the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. And the reason I didn't start with that is because we don't have Pharisees and tax collectors specifically the way they were back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That those aren't the names we would use for what they're trying to represent. The names we would use are, for the Pharisee, would be me when I was in 5th grade. I did everything right. Mm-hmm. I was a perfect kid. Mm-hmm. None of that stuff was bad until the tax collector would be Kevin Callahan.
Gotcha.
Until Kevin Callahan comes along and I use him as a way to feel even more better about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the stories in the Gospel of Luke And if I was a good Bible guy, I could tell you the exact chapter and verse and all that stuff, but I'm not. So it's in the Gospel of Luke, and you can find it if you want. But it's the Pharisee and the tax collector, and they're doing the very thing that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So that,
or at least the Pharisee's doing it.
So that part of being human has been around a long time, obviously.
It's been around a long time, and people have tried to capture it in stories, not to make us feel bad, but to try to help us take a look at ourselves.
To see ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. You know, that's why I'm glad we could share our stories with the hope that somebody might be able to see themselves within the story, not to compare, not to put yourself down.
And not to jump right into who's good and who's bad,
right?
You know, in the story. And I think, you know, that's not, when Jesus is sharing that story, that's not the reason. I feel that's not the reason he's sharing the story. Like you said, it's something to cause us to look inside, to really be able to see ourselves better as a whole.
I do too. I agree with you. I don't think Jesus told stories to try to say, hey, I want you to feel really bad about yourself, so I'm going to tell you this story. I think he told stories to try to get us to engage the story, and then the story has a way to help affect me so that it then changes me to live, so that I can go out and live my life. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll be a little bit more compassionate toward the Kevin Callahans of the world, or toward the people who are really succeeding. Yeah. Or whoever else might fall into my vision of who I can compare myself to. Mm-hmm. Because it's just, I think it's so natural. It's like second nature. We don't even know we're doing it sometimes.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, we thank you for taking the time to listen, and we hope that this story today, we hope it impacts you. We hope it's something that you take the time to sit with and think about, and we would love to hear what it brings to mind for you. Maybe it's a story you have that you want to share with us, or maybe it just makes you think. But we hope that you'll take some time to do that, and we hope that you'll join us again. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you, and take care.